is Ian Chin, and welcome to the Baking Chin, the show that tries to show that baking is fun, easy, and I think rather appealing. So today we're going to make a veritable pain de campagne, or country bread. And this is a very nice bread because it's very big and it lasts a very long time. And if you had a restaurant, you could call it your pain maison, or if you were going on a outing, you could bring this bread along and you could tear off pieces and shove them in your mouth. And I think it's very lovely to eat and even lovelier to serve. And if you're going to a friend's house and you don't know what to bring, I think instead of something alcoholic, you could always bring a pain de campagne, or your own lovely country bread. So, let's get started.
First, for the starter, mix 100 grams whole wheat flour, 50 grams rye flour, 150 milliliters water, and either 1 gram instant yeast or 25 grams sourdough starter. Let this stand for about 8 hours or so. After the water has fermented and risen, for the dough, first we shall mix 450 grams strong white flour, 50 grams whole wheat flour, and 350 milliliters water, and let this rest for about 15 to 20 minutes to allow the flour to absorb all the water. This will make it much easier to knead later, you shall see. After the resting, mix in 1 gram instant yeast, 12 grams salt, and all of the starter. Knead this all together until quite elastic, about 6 to 10 minutes or so by hand. It should come away from the table almost completely. Now let this ferment for 2 hours, and halfway through, fold it in 2, and then 2 again, kind of like an envelope or puff pastry if you're so inclined. And this will give it the extra strength that it needs, because this is a rather wet dough, so sometimes it doesn't always have the right strength. And now, after it's done fermenting, fold it into an envelope yet again, and this is a rough envelope, as you can see. If it gets a little sticky, you can always put a little flour on your hands. And now, let this sit for about 10 minutes to let the glutens relax, and after 10 minutes, just plop it back onto the board, and then reform it into another envelope shape. But this time, when you're done finishing the envelope shape, form it into a nice tight boule or ball shape, and try not to break the skin too much, as it'll be an imperfection when you finally bake it. Now, place the shaped dough seam side down onto a heavily floured tea towel, and then fold it up kind of like an envelope, because we got a lot of envelopes in this recipe. And this works just about as good as a banneton, I would say. Now let this rise for 1 to 1.5 hours. Now I bake my bread in a Dutch oven or a cocotte, because my French mini oven is a little unreliable. You could also use a Pyrex casserole, an antique fish poacher, or a turkey cooker. Any really enclosed cooking vessel like this will work very well for this sort of baking. Now to use a Dutch oven or cocotte for bread baking, first preheat the oven with the cocotte inside for 30 minutes at 450 F or 230 C. Now place the risen bread in the hot Dutch oven, and right now you have 2 choices to make at this point for scoring. Either you could put the bread into the oven seam side down and then cut a pattern, or you could place the bread in seam side up with no cuts. Either way will give a cracking result, and most importantly will allow the bread to expand to its full potential, which is important in bread baking. And bake in the Dutch oven covered for 25 minutes at 450 F 230 C, then afterwards take the top off and bake for an additional 20 minutes. How delicious and warm!
And here are the finished country loaves. And as you can see, they're very well risen, and they're very bien cuit, or well baked. And what that means is that these are perhaps a little darker than your more usual modern loaf. I think the current trend with modern loaves is to make them a little lighter, a little more blonde, which is okay for something like a sandwich bread or a pain de mie, but I think if you want a really nice, hearty, rustic loaf, you must make it bien cuit. And also, I like it a little darker. I think when it's a little darker, it has a little more flavor, and the crust is crustier too. But that's up to your taste, but I highly suggest you make it bien cuit. And this is the one we made, cutting it with the razor. And it has reflected all those cuts and it looks very polished. But also, here is the one that just uses the natural seam, which is also very nice. And what I like about this is that the seam is just exploded, so it looks like something you'd find in the forest, or like a meteorite or something. And here's the inside of the bread, and as you can see, the interior crumb structure is holy, but not too holy, so that not all the toppings you put on this will go onto the plate. So it's a very good, firm bread. And now, let's give this a bit of a try. Now this is very nice with butter or cheese, but I'm going to opt to use it with some jam. I have some red fruit jam and some fig jam, and I think I'm going to go for the fig jam. And I like a good liberal lashing of jam, and I'm going to put some yogurt, full fat yogurt, which is always my preference. And let's try it. It's awfully good. The bread itself has a very deep wheaty flavor and a slight sour tang, which is very nice. And the jam ain't too bad neither. And that's how to make pan de campagne, or country bread. And as you can see, this was very easy to do, and most of it is just waiting for it to ferment and develop flavor. And I think the results are undeniably delicious and very bien cuit. And I think this type of bread has a lot more character than some of those so-called modern white and fluffy blonde loaves. And it's a very good, just basic table bread for any time of the day. And it'll last for about, I think, 3 or 4 days, and even after that here's one that I've kept for about a week. Even after this you can grind this into breadcrumbs or use it for bread and butter pudding. So when you're alone in your apartment the next time with nothing to do, why not bake yourself a loaf of country bread? So thanks very much for joining me today on the Baking Chin. My name is Ian Chin, and as always I wish you happy baking.